So today is actually a summary of a series of 10 lectures that I used to give in Israel, dealing with different aspects of love, companionship, sexuality, and all of them in the context of Judaism and holiness. Okay, so I will not try to cover everything. I will try to be serious, but with a smile on my face. Okay? And if you want to blush, it's fine. I'm having fun making you blush. Okay? Good with that? So why is it all complicated and where does it start? This whole turbulence of relationship, love, and sex. It starts in the beginning. And the beginning is Bereshit. What happens in Bereshit? The first thing that we encounter in the creation of humanity is that it happened twice. Bereshit, the first version, on the sixth day, God is creating men and women together in God's image. Zachar v'nekeva bara'am. They are being created out of nowhere together. And then we read Genesis verse 2, chapter 2. And then we were told that man was created first, and then the women was created where from? No.
Side.
That's only
side,
one
that's
translation, from side.
Yes,
Tzela is
yes,
side.
yes, yes.
Okay, and there are two legends of the sages that talks about it. One is that they were conjoined in the back. And this is why when men named all the animals and he saw that they are male and female, he couldn't see the female that was attached to his back. And this is why I suspect that when men and women see the same thing, they describe a whole different picture. Right?
Okay.
They were saying the same thing, they were describing different pictures.
Because he's looking this way and she's looking that way.
Derrida talks about it, and other philosophers talks
I
about
never
it.
heard that.
The world is what you describe, and each one describes a different thing from reality, and we create our perspective of reality. I'm not saying it just to be nasty about men and women. I'm saying that each and every one of us has an individual way of looking at things. And by the way, if we're talking about men and women, if you remember, Adam named the whole creation, but the first one to name God was the woman, and she wasn't named Chava on this chapter. Ha'isha. Okay, and when does she name God? After giving birth to Cain, saying Ki ben kaniti la'Adonai. And this is the first time that we see the name that we don't pronounce, but is the name of God. Okay, so Adam is naming, is giving existence to the real world, while the woman is actually giving birth to spirituality. Okay, so that's one
After
story.
she has a chance.
Yes.
Interesting.
And I will go
the process of naming her child. Yeah.
naming, and I will get back to it later on. Now the other story is about the sages trying to explain why do we need two different stories about the creation of the world or the creation of humanity. Now if we will look at different rabbis from different branches in Judaism, from Kabbalistic perspective, from halachic perspective. If we're talking about Rabbi Soloveitchik, then he will talk in his book, The Person of Faith, okay, Isha Emunah. He will talk about two prototypes of human beings, those that live in harmony with nature and those that change nature. Okay, perfecting the world. So we have two stories about two different types of people. But that doesn't explain the creation once again. And then there are other professors that will say that one reflects the common belief in Judea and the other one reflects the common belief in Israel. So we're using two different mesorot together. Okay, that's not the traditional understanding, that's the academic one. Others will say that one reflects the understanding that God created something from nothing, and one comes to show us that God put order in the chaos. So no one will say that the chaos came before God or anything like that. God was there before everything. And this is the notion of hamakom that we call God. God created a space within God's self in order to create the world. Okay? That will be from a spiritual or a mystic perspective. But apparently the sages, when they read the two stories, asked themselves a whole different question. They asked themselves why the only one that was created differently was the woman. Because the first time she was created in God's image, and the second time she was created from Adam's rib or Adam's side, or there was some kind of an operation over there that had to do with Adam, flesh and bone, Adam's mortality. Okay? And they come up with a very surprising story that actually is based on an argument. And what is the heart of the argument? Who's gonna be on top while having sex? This is the story. I kid you not.
While they're attached to each other, they're
No, not while they're attached.
Yeah, I was wondering.
That would be a little
Okay.
difficult.
Adam and Eve, both naked, in the beautiful weather, the beautiful sunshine of the Garden of Eden. And you know, under every blossoming tree, and there was a lot of trees in the Garden of Eden. And the first thing that God is telling them is be fertile and multiply. Yay, God, great! Like, what can you ask for more? You have food, sunshine, pastoral environment. Who could ask for more? And then they're going to perform the first mitzvah. And Eve is telling Adam, I want to be on top. And he says, no, I'm the mano. I'm on top. That's the story of the sages. Come on. The end of the 9th decade in Babylonian, the Geonim era. That's all in the book of Alpha, Beta, the Beit Sirah. Okay? I didn't take it out of the blue. It's an ancient story from the 9th century.
They're arguing while they're still united, or
No. They're not doing it yet. They're arguing.
But are they individuals?
They're individuals. We're still talking about the foreplay, not the act.
They're arguing after being
After being
commanded.
separated.
After being commanded before
Before
Okay.
doing it.
Before
Because
doing
they
it.
are arguing on how to do it.
on how to do it. Okay? And then Adam says, I'm the mano in this family. I'm on top. And Eve, as a very self-aware feminist, tells him, who puts you on top of me? I'm going to be on top. If you don't like it, we don't have to do it. And Adam, as a mature man, do the right thing, cries to dad. God, I want to do the mitzvah, but she doesn't. And apparently, according to the story, he's treating Eve very badly, saying some very offensive things to her. So she packs her stuff, the whole fig leaf, and she moves to the center of what will become later on the Red Sea, where the Israelites cross from Egypt to the Promised Land, to the desert. And she sits there and she doesn't want to return to the Garden of Eden, to start humanity with Adam. Now God is looking down, saying, okay, someone needs to be the responsible adult. So he sends down 3 angels, Sanoi, Sansinoi, and Samangalef. And they're coming to Adam, saying, Adam, it's time to start humanity. And Adam is saying, well, I want to, she doesn't want to. So they go to the woman, saying, would you please start humanity? And she's saying that as long as her partner does not treat her as equal, she will not start humanity with him. So the angels pulls their shoulders and go back to God, saying, well, this is the situation. So God sends them back again, this time with a threat, saying to Eve, if you will not start humanity, you will have legs hairy as a goat's legs.
I think the sages had as much fun at that time as we can have today.
Little did they knew about wax or anything else. Okay?
Funny that the threat came to Eve and not to Adam.
Yeah. So you still need to remember who wrote and who told the story.
Exactly.
Okay? In the right context. So Eve, surprisingly, answers back saying, I would rather have a goat's leg than to live with a partner that don't see me and treat me as an equal human being. This time the angels are really confused, going back to God, saying, she said, no! And then they come back for the 3rd time, saying, if you will not start humanity with Adam, you will start the Sitra Achra, the demonic world, with the devil.
You will start?
You will not give life to humanity. You will give life to anti-humanity. Okay, it's like matter and antimatter. The Sitra Achra, the other side. And the first woman says, you know what? I would rather be the devil's wife, being treated as equal, than to live my life and start humanity with someone who doesn't see me as an equal.
Lilith?
Yes. And the first woman was not named Chava, she was named Lilith. And Lilith comes from the word Laila, nocturnal, because she didn't start in the light, she started in the dark side. Okay? And then we do need to start humanity. So God put Adam to sleep and create a woman, another woman. And when he wakes up and he finds this woman next to him, this time God is telling him, Al ken ya'azov ish et aviv ve'et imo, ve'davak be'ishto ve'ayu lebasar echad. You started as one flesh, and you need to think as one flesh. Yes, you are 2 separate individuals, but next time, when your wife is leaving, you will leave even your mother and your father, your nuclear family, and you will chase her. I will not do the work for you. I will not send the angels. You need to make things right. And this time it wasn't a suggestion. It was a description. You were created in a way that it won't happen again. This time you were created first, Adam, but please keep in mind that when she's leaving, you are chasing her. Okay, and this whole story began with an argument about sexuality, about who is going to be on top.
So what happened to the first woman?
So the first woman became Lilith, the queen of the demons, that is giving birth to 1,000 demons a day,
Never heard
and
this
1,000
ever.
of her children are passed away each day. Okay, that's according to the Jewish mysticism. And this is why, especially in Yemen and Iraq and other places in this region, when a woman is giving birth, they put a necklace on her neck that looks like a mezuzah, and it is written, Sanoi, Sansenoi, and Samangalef, Chutz Lilith. Because the last thing that the angels told her is that you're going to start the other side, the Sitra Achra. But whenever you will meet us or you will meet our names, you cannot be present at that place. Okay, and they took an oath, both sides together, that she's entitled to start her life there, but she will not intervene with the three angels. So when a woman was giving birth, they used to put this charm as a protective charm.
Right.
And one of the reasons that we are breaking the glass in a Jewish wedding is, one, to remember the destruction of the first and the second temple, but hardly do people know that in the Mid-Ages, in the Jewish mysticism, it was a way to chase away Lilith from the couple's new home. Because one of the commitments of the husband in the first night of marriage is to have intercourse with his wife. Okay, and it was a way to chase Lilith away so that this reunion will be fertile. You make a lot of noise to chase away the demons and Lilith.
I also heard that with a newborn baby before the circumcision, they read the prayers to protect the baby from
To protect the
Lilith.
baby, and also sprinkle salt on the challah, on the doorposts, and on the windows.
Because
Because
salt
the
has a
demons
special
don't like salt.
I was totally raised and within my Jewish education with a non-devil side to Judaism.
Yeah.
And
It only
I like
started.
it that way.
It only started after the Babylonian era. There's a lot of Babylonian and Sasanic influence on Judaism at that period of time, and it's part of the Jewish mysticism that was always there, but as an undercurrent. Okay, so this whole
Thank you.
complex issue starts from the beginning, from the book of Bereshit, from the legends about the book of Bereshit. And I think that there's a reason that it's there. Unlike Christianity, that look at sexuality and sex as a sin, for us it's the first mitzvah that we were given. But we do need to remember that it's got a very specific context, and that's marriage, the nuclear family. Okay? We are being God's partner in creating the world by giving birth to new life, but it should happen in a certain context. Now, before I will talk about this context, I am not going to talk about the family purity or impurity, taharat mishpacha, or other halachic issues related to sex. I want to address it from a social point of view, a spiritual point of view, and way to bring holiness into our lives. Okay? So those.
I'm still thinking about this whole story that I've heard for the first time, because I'm thinking, here's God who creates in His image the couple that are meant for each other, and before they can have a family, He's already divorced. She's gone away.
This is why
and
we say that when a couple getting divorced, all hell breaks loose.
maybe all hell breaks loose before they. and then they have to get divorced. It's just
Okay, but I
interesting.
think that from a modern perspective, this is probably the first story that I will teach, whether if I'm talking about feminism or about standing up for your rights or anything that have to do with that. Okay. Usually, when we talk about the Torah or when we talk about the Mishnah and the Talmud, we talk about our sages, the rabbis from the past. We tend to think about old people with a huge beard and a capuchon on their head, or wrapped up in talit and the tefillin, and we hardly think about our ancestors as humans dealing with humans' worries or with day-to-day issues. And apparently both in the Tanakh, Mishnah, and Talmud, we find a whole lot of discussions, thoughts, stories that are around intimacy, sex, and fertility. A whole lot of them. So let's try to think together about all the biblical stories, Tanakh, okay, not just the Torah, Tanakh, that involves sex. I already mentioned the first one, right? Adam and Eve. Lot. What happened with Lot?
Well, they had to leave, and they thought
Leave
left
where?
with his daughters, his two daughters.
They left the whole family. It's not
The whole
Gomorrah.
family, yeah. And they thought that they went to a cave.
His wife died on the way,
On
looking
the-
back.
Yeah,
Okay, so
exactly. She became a statue of salt,
Mhm.
and
They saw the whole city
Arriving-
being destroyed.
arriving. Well, no, they couldn't, because otherwise they would have turned into salt. But they thought that the whole world was being destroyed, and therefore to recreate humanity, both daughters thought that that was the only way was to have intercourse with their father.
So what, do you remember the whole story? What did they do?
They drank
Yeah.
him to
They
be
made
able
him
to make
drunk.
love. They make him drunk, yeah.
Yeah.
So
But
that-
we're taught that the father didn't know the first night, but the second night he should have known what was going on and he should have stopped her from doing it.
Now that's a question. I already on things. That's a question. Shouldn't he or shouldn't he not? Because the two offsprings coming from these incests are named Ammon and Moab. Ammon, his first name was Ben Ami, the son of my father. And the other nation that came out was Moab, Me-Av in Hebrew, from the father. And it was the first time that the rabbis look into this story and saying that they did committed a sin because there are certain restrictions on sex in Judaism. One of them is Gilui Arayot, sex in the family. Okay, it's completely forbidden and there's a death penalty for it. But the rabbis weren't that harsh on them, but they try to look at it saying that those daughters thought that the world is about to end. So it's a mitzvah, a avera lishma. They committed a sin in order to sanctify God's name, not in order.
is that
commit a sin.
why it is like acceptable to do an avera if you truly thought that it was a mitzvah, that you do it in the wrong way, basically.
It's not if you truly thought that it's a mitzvah, if it is in order to make a mitzvah.
Okay, yeah, so it's different.
And I'm going to mention that later on with another woman,
Okay.
or another 4 women. And
But
there's
for
a
example,
saying in James Bond that if it happened once, it's an accident, twice it's coincidence, third time it's a pattern. And I will show you that there is a pattern here in Avera Lishma when it comes to sexuality. Okay, so the daughters of Lot thought that the humanity is going to come to an end. They had intercourse with their dad, they got pregnant, and the rabbis looked at it as Avera Lishma. It was a sin, but the purpose was for mitzvah, a greater mitzvah.
You also have, again, I think it's with Lot, when the people of Sodom wants to know
the guests
and who are angels, and Lot come in at the door and close the door behind him and says that instead he can offer his daughters who are virgins, and they don't want to, and the angels pull him inside, and there's a lightning or something like that.
Okay, that's a legend,
but that's with Michelle. We wanted to have more explanation. We were surprised, and I have the Rashi version. Is it my edition, or is there no comment on this part? We found no comments on this part about.
You will find the comments mostly in the legends of the sages,
okay,
in the Rabbi edition.
Yeah.
But I can give you specific references later on. Okay. And the next one, if you remember.
The next, before or after?
No, the next after.
What?
There were other.
Isaac knew Rebecca, and he was consoled after the death of his mother.
Okay.
Jacob
what else?
And
Before Isaac. If we're
Abraham
talking
and
about
Sarah.
Abraham and Sarah, what happened there?
They were cousins.
Well, he had to make
that's
that,
okay
he had,
according to
he
the
had
law.
to take Agar.
Not Agar. What happened in Egypt?
She's my sister.
Yeah, he said
She's
it was
my
his
sister. Where was she taken to?
Okay.
Yeah.
To the house of Pharaoh.
Pharaoh.
Now the Torah is very silent about it.
Yeah.
But something happened there. Because they have committed a sin. And the whole house of Pharaoh and the Egyptians suffered from God's rage until they figured out that there's something happened there and that they were wrong. Okay, Abraham is not a saint in this story.
But didn't they not have sex?
Pardon?
He didn't touch Sarah.
No.
He said, I would have touched her. You told me.
Can you please
The
tell the
text
story?
is silent about it.
Can you please
when
tell
they
the
went-
story
silent.
instead of little bits?
They
'Cause
don't
I-
tell us if they had or hadn't.
Yeah,
They tell us about the outcome.
Only the
About
second
God's
time.
rage.
Only the second time the Pharaoh didn't touch her, but the first time we don't know.
The second time is with Jacob. It happens 3 times with all 3 forefathers.
But I
Can we tell
thought
the
that
story?
Yeah,
before
yeah.
he was excoriated by Pharaoh, saying, "Well, why didn't you tell me it was your sister? I would not have entertained it." And there was no description of the fact that they did have intercourse.
That's what I said, that the text is silent about it. He's silent about
Abraham
you
passed
could
on
read it
Sarah
two
as his
ways.
That's
sister,
when-
That's
so
what
they
I'm
wouldn't
saying.
kill
That's
him.
when
You can read it 2 ways.
At the end of
We
the-
prefer to read it that they didn't, but the text is silent about it.
Is that in?
It won't hold in any court saying that they didn't. It won't hold saying that they did, but the text is silent.
In Lech Lecha, God tells him to leave the country of his fathers and blah blah, and they leave with Sarah, and they go to Egypt, and on the way they're intercepted by Pharaoh's army, and when they ask, "Who are you?" That's Sarah, and "Who are you?" That's my sister or that's my brother. So they describe each other as brother and sister instead of man and wife, husband and wife, because later on they explained that they thought because of the behavior,
The law of
law,
of
Is that
Mesopotamia,
when
they
you-
could have killed him.
yeah, when you
and
take the
her.
woman, you kill the husband, and then the woman is yours. So,
But if
not-
she's his sister, then he is the legal guardian, and in order to take her, you need to ask his permission.
Right.
Okay, so it's a different
and
relationship.
because she was absolutely beautiful.
You know, my sister.
Pharaoh wanted her.
Okay, a different story. Dinah.
Yeah, that's a
What
di-
happened with Dinah in Shechem?
She, her brothers revolted. Her brothers killed the town
Why?
because she was raped.
Well, it says she was raped,
Who's
but
In the beginning she was raped, but then later
he
on
wanted to marry her.
she wanted to
So
marry
what happened?
him, and they couldn't live with that. And her father was there to negotiate their marriage, and her brothers couldn't cope with that.
He said that you brought shame upon my house.
They say it, not him. The brothers, and he is telling her brothers that they brought shame on his house, killing the people of the town. Okay, let's not get too much into the stories, but once again the conflict is about sex. The next story that we can mention is Yehuda and
Right.
Tamar.
Yes, I'm gonna say it.
Okay, do you know the story?
I don't remember that one.
She got raped as well.
Tamar
No,
married
she
He
dressed.
took his,
Yehuda's
stone.
Yeah,
son.
she raped as a whore.
He
Dressed up as
died before she conceived and had a successor. So it means that she needs a yevum to marry his brother.
Right.
She married the brother, and the other brother died as well before she gave birth. Okay, and the third brother was too afraid that she's a black widow, and he said, I don't want to, and the text tells us that he spilled his sperm. Instead of fertilizing her, he spilled his sperm on the ground. Okay, and that was a sin, and from that the sages learned that we should not spill our sperm in vain. Okay? But what she did was to dress up and cover her face, and she seduced her father-in-law to have sex with her, and afterward, when he wanted to pay her, she said, no, don't pay me now, but leave me a deposit. Leave me your seal, your
staff.
staff, and your what we call in Hebrew
Bag.
til, a fringe. Okay. And later on, when people came to him saying, your daughter-in-law got pregnant to someone, and she needs to face Beit Din and to be killed for,
harlotry.
then the drama is being built to the climax, and then she says, please send the court when he was sitting in this court. These are the things that will tell who the father is. And when he recognized the deposit, he said, she did the right thing. They let her go. And he took responsibility. So once again, we meet Avera Lishma.
Yeah. And I'm going to do an Avera Lishma. Would you like to pause so you can eat your dinner and then can have a discussion? And no, you're good?
There's nothing better than munching.
Okay.
Well,
That
that's
way
not
it's
true.
not calories. It's
That's
munching.
right.
Talking about sex, that's not true. I agree with Norman.
There are
You said
things better than monkey.
Yeah.
A nibble
Basically,
here and
yes.
there.
Yeah. Okay, the next story, I'm not going to talk too long about it. I'm just giving you an example to see the pattern behind it. The next story about temptation and seduction will be with Joseph and Potiphar's wife. We all know the story and the outcome of him refusing to her fatal attraction, biblical version. Okay. The next one will be Pilegesh Bagiv'ah, when a person from the Levite tribe went through the town of Giv'ah in the Binyamin zone, or Binyamin's section of the land. She was raped and killed, and he vivisected her body and sent it to each and every tribe as an example that it will never happen again. And for that, the Benjamin tribe was punished that they will not marry with any other tribe.
Sorry, so who was killed?
Pilegesh Bagifa. There were people from the Benjamin's tribe. Okay, I'm not gonna go into it too much.
This after Yetzias Mitzrayim.
Yeah, already in the land of Israel. Faith was strong, but you needed proof. Saw her bathing on the roof. Her beauty and the moonlight overthrew you.
Hallelujah.
Talking about
David and
Bathsheba.
Bathsheba. Thank you.
Okay.
Not me.
And the sages were so terrified by what he did that they actually said that if anyone will claim that David committed a sin, he is blaspheming. Okay? Which means that they actually knew. What he did was to send her husband
Uriah
to
out
the
to
battle,
battle.
and knowing that he will get killed so he can take
Yeah.
her.
That's right.
We call it kasher aval masriach, kosher but stinks. Okay, and then Nathan came, the prophet, with this whole story about the lamb. You know what I'm talking about? A person that had many lambs, and his neighbor only got one little lamb, and then guests came over, and he managed to take his neighbor's only lamb, slaughter it, and serve it as a dinner because he didn't want to use any of his lambs. And David went out outraged. This person should be severely punished and blah 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 blah. And then the prophet said to him, okay, now look in your house, in your palaces, what have you done with Uriah and his wife? You could have any woman in your kingdom, but you chose to take his wife. You've chosen to do it. Okay?
Who was the prophet?
I think it was Nathan. So once again, but just the rest of the song, Hallelujah, deals with another story about sex. She tied you to a kitchen chair, she took your throne, she cut your hair. That's not David. Shimshon. Okay? And apparently Delilah was very good at bondage. Because each and every night she tied him to the bed. And while having intercourse with him, she tried to make him spill out his secret. And eventually she succeeded. Okay? So this time it's not just sex, it's kinky sex. The book of Judges. Okay. The next one, Amnon veTamar. Sex in the family. Have brothers.
Yeah.
King David's
Yeah.
offsprings. Amnon desired Tamar. She pleaded to him, ask our father's permission because we're not from the same mother. You can marry me. But he refused. He raped her. And then the other brother, Avshalom, took her under his wings. And 2 years later, Avshalom murdered Amnon. Okay? Another story, the book of Ruth. How does she get married with
She lays at his
Boaz?
feet. Is that a euphemism?
And if you'll believe that, I will tell you another one.
Yes.
But
Well, I don't see that's such a stretch.
let's say that she did just lay by his feet.
Yeah, but the point of
What
the matter
did
is...
he think? What did he thought when
He
he
thought
woke
that
up in the
people will
morning?
see her coming out in the morning and that people will assume that they had made love.
Oh, and because he would wake up by her side, he would think that something happened. Because being drunk, he couldn't remember it.
Okay, so
Yeah.
once again, let's say that they didn't have sex, but we have deception around sex. And once again, just like Yehuda and his daughter-in-law, there is a certain commitment that happened that moment. And this is why he's giving her some signs as well. And eventually, he is marrying her. Okay, in another story, once again, if we're talking about the Megillot, the book of Esther,
Yes.
what happened in the palace? Now, this is when our sages really move uncomfortable in their uncomfortable chairs. Because, yes, it was Avera Lishma, but how can Esther have sex with a Gentile? And then they come with a wonderful explanation. She didn't enjoy it. She was Karka Ha'olam. She was just like the ground, the soil of earth.
I like that.
She didn't enjoy it, so it's kosher.
But there was some between Mordechai and Esther.
Yeah. Doda
It was
can
supposedly
refer
his
to
uncle.
her uncle,
great
but it's
part.
also her lover.
Right.
Okay?
So we can eat pork and not enjoy it.
I will tell you a joke about it later when we're not recording.
And your parents aren't here.
No, they can be here. Now, that's the book of Esther. And once again, there is something there. She spends over a year in the harem among other women, and then the king is checking her. Okay, and she returns to the harem, and then he decides to marry her. Okay? And by the way, according to the sages, he decided to marry her because she was the only blonde in the palace.
Esther was blonde?
Yerakreket Haita. Yeah, that's according to the Babylonian
What
Talmud.
does it mean?
She was blonde.
Yerakreket?
Yerakreket means greenish, but the meaning was that she was blonde.
According to the comments,
so odd.
she was like 60 or 70 years old,
Me?
and she was. But
One day.
when we were saying that she was beautiful, that's because she was the perfect woman, and that's her internal beauty was just, she was just radiating.
I'm glad that you're bringing it to the table. I think that what
Radiant.
you're quoting is a wonderful way of the rabbis not
Not to
to
get
deal
involved.
with female sexuality,
Okay.
or to deal with the fact that she was beautiful, she was gorgeous, and the king desires her. No, it doesn't happen in Judaism. That's not part
But
of
we know
our
that
culture.
Sarah was very beautiful, Rachel was very beautiful, and the physical beauty was assumed because Pharaoh desired her, Jacob desired her. Rachel and Sarah. So they do talk
Now,
about
in the
women's
Jewish
beauty.
context, trying to contain women's sexuality and women's beauty, you need to cover yourself, you need to be modest, you need to be undesirable except by your husband. But the virtues that you do need to have are very different. Okay? So,
Oh,
You're not the first
once
one.
again, we need to remember that we're talking about a patriarchic society, and the rules, beside having religious religious reason, also have a social reason behind them. Okay, so that's Ruth and Esther, and then comes the crown jewel, Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs. Okay, there's never been and never will be a more erotic, beautiful poem or book like Shir Hashirim. And I'm not talking about all the Indian books or other books that tells us about different positions and stuff like that. I'm talking about beautiful, pure love and eros. Now, eros, the word eros, its ancient meaning is desire, desirable. And once this desire was fulfilled, it's no longer eros, it's lust. And Shir Hashirim talks about longing, talks about the desire, the heartbreaking human condition that you crave for someone and you can't have him or her. And that's Shir Shirim, and there's a whole discussion, halachic discussion, whether Shir Shirim should be part of the canon or not. And after we are touching Shir Shirim, do we need to wash our hands, litol yadayim? Do we need, because the Torah cannot be impure, what after we touch the Torah, we need to litol yadayim, to take some, to diminish some of the kedusha that we just touched. Okay? And when it comes to gniza, when we cannot use the Torah
So
anymore,
you need to wash your hands after reading the Torah?
if you touch the Torah,
That's why we touch it with the tzitzit. That's it.
with the tzitzit or with the yad or the atzei chaim. Okay? But since I'm the one who's usually doing the reading and the rolling and the setting up almost on a weekly basis, I always on Shabbat or whenever I read from the Torah do netilat yadayim.
First time ever.
ספר תורה אינו מקבל טומאה, אבל מטמא את הידיים. Okay? That's according to the Maimonides and other
It's clear.
places. But there's a whole debate about Shir Shirim. If you can't use the Torah, if the Torah is psula, you put it in the gniza. You don't throw it away. Okay? What happened with Shir Shirim? And there's a debate saying that you do need to litol yadayim, but you don't put the Shir Shirim in the gniza. It is holy, but it's not part of the canon. And all different settings. And then Rabbi Akiva came, banged on the table, and said, come on guys, there was never been a greater day to the Jewish world than the day that we were giving Shir Shirim. And he's talking about two different levels. One is Shir Shirim as pure love between men and women, and pure love between God or Shekhinah and the people of Israel. But before we go to mysticism and interpretation and Pshat, Drash, Remez, Sod, the Pardes, Pshat, Remez, Drash, Sod, let's talk about the Pshat. But what we actually read there, it's about love. And I've never seen more erotic descriptions than in Shir Shirim. And they're very graphic. Very graphic.
Recite something? I don't remember.
Binding upon your heart.
Oh,
You know what?
Rose buds?
You're coming from the theater and performing art field. Take Shir Shirim, Song of Songs at home. Most of it is built as a dialogue. Read it to each other, lock the door, and take your time.
It's a
And
date.
fulfill the commandments.
Do your homework.
Maybe we'll have a boy after all.
Okay, so that was just part of the things that we find in the Bible. There are other stories, and I think that the whole discussion, both in Bible, Mishnah, Talmud, legends, and other in human sexuality, is there because it is part of our life. It's part of the human condition. And because people came with those questions to the rabbis. And the rabbis dealt with the same questions in their own family. Now we need to understand that it's not just a theoretical issue. The high priest could not be appointed to this position unless he was married. According to the halakha, you cannot be a congregational rabbi if you are not married. And in some traditions, if you are not married with kids. Because you need to understand what the relationship means and what the family structure means before you can advise people or tell them how to live their life. You need to be married with kids.
Thinking about the movie Keeping the Faith.
I love this movie.
Ben Stiller is not married.
When I
So
was
how can he be the...
I think it was a problem for the older guys. They wanted to see him married.
yeah, But
Sorry about that.
in nowadays both Orthodox world or progressive world, I think besides very ultra-Orthodox congregations, no one actually looks at it. Okay?
Actually, Russian Orthodox Church has the same rule that the priest cannot get the congregation if he is not married.
I guess they're not Catholics because then you need to marry God.
But Polish Catholics are allowed to get married.
Really?
Yes.
Which Catholics?
Polish Catholics.
Today it's a different notion, just to touch this issue and then we'll move back to Judaism. As far as I understand today, if you were married before you were ordained to be a priest, a Catholic priest, then it's fine, but you can reach a certain level and not above it. And if you weren't married when you were ordained, then you can't marry. So it's not just the original thing, it's a more fun.
That sequencing.
Yep. Okay, so just to wrap up this part, okay, and then we'll take a break and I will eat my dead fish. Sexuality in Judaism is not considered as a sin. It's a commandment. But there's a framework that we need to work within. And this framework is the family. Now, I want to tell you two stories. One is from the Bible and the other one is from the Babylonian Talmud. In one, as you know, whenever we write God's name, we cannot erase it, tear it, or throw it away. Okay? It needs to be handled with a certain degree of holiness and respect. Except for one specific case. If a man suspects that his wife is cheating on him, he goes to the high priest in his town. And then there's a whole public event that the high priest writes the name of God on a little parchment, and he erased God's name in water and add a little soil
I
to
was
it,
going to say poison too.
soil, and then the woman needs to drink those water in the public setting. Now, if she did commit an adultery, then according to the text, her guts will turn and she will suffer an agonizing death. And if she didn't, then her husband need to publicly apologize and take her back home. And the sages ask, how can it be? And the answer is that there is no greater thing in the world for God than bringing peace between a man and a woman. Now let's be realistic about it. How many times do you actually think that a woman's guts turned inside out and she died a horrible death? This whole situation, public situation, was there to prevent men false accusing their women in adultery.
I heard a shiur that was because it's to erase God's name, to write another God's name, because God's name is also Shalom, the Shalom Bayit. But I was thinking that's to write Emet, truth, or Shalom. In both cases,
God's name. The text is very specific about it. Okay, Emet v'Shalom are much later interpretations that has to do with Kabbalah and mysticism and the Golem of Prague and other stories, but the text in the Bible talks about God's name. And that's the only time that you're entitled to erase God's name, to bring peace between a couple. This is how holy it is considered. Okay, and the next story.
But does that assume that if she actually did commit adultery, it's still better to put that aside and keep the couple together?
Yes. Now, another story on Tractate Yoma that talks about Yom Kippurim at the temple. Tells us about a very sacred moment that if people have prepared themselves in the right way and they reached a certain point that they can actually stand in front of the parochet, the veil that is covering the ark, then the high priest will let them glance at the Ark of the Covenant. And if the people, the Israelites, are united and as one, the two angels, the two kruvim that are on the Ark of the Covenant will look like a man and a woman making love. And if the Israelites are apart, then they will sit at both edges of the ark, back to back. Okay, but imagine in the holiest of the holiest, in the center of the temple, there are two angels making love on the ark. And you do need to remember that it is forbidden. One of the things that we are forbidden to do is to have sex as part of a religious ceremony. Kedusha. Lo tiyeh lecha becha kedusha mikol bnotecha. It is forbidden to have sex as part of a religious ritual. But there it is, at the center of the temple. A man and a woman making love. The holiest of the holiest. Okay? Let's stop here, and then in the next section I would like to talk with you about the Jewish medicine box, the Jewish foreplay, Jewish dirty talks, and
Did you put the hammer in the oven?
I was thinking something about chicken
the cosmopolitan list of how to drive your husband crazy for you. Okay, all from the Jewish text. And we'll talk a little bit about
It's
Zohar,
where the chicken
Kabbalah.
soup comes from.
And it was subscribers.
What did you say?
That's where the chicken soup comes from.
And we don't always have these talks, but we do have sex once a week. Now, I want you to take this quote and put it in a Jewish perspective. And there is a Jewish perspective about how frequent should we have it.
As often as you want.
No.
No.
As
A
often
minimum.
as
And twice on
you
Shabbat.
want.
At the
And
woman,
twice on
Exactly.
In the
Shabbat.
Ketubah,
What did you say?
as often
in
as
the
the
Jewish
woman.
Ketubah, one of the man's obligation is to have intercourse with his wife, and not only, yes, you can come and listen, it's fine. Now he wants to have a Jewish marriage. Not only to have intercourse with his wife, but also to satisfy her.
And she will want tonight. That's what the
Now,
guy says.
According to the halakha, a woman can claim her husband, but he cannot claim her. He may and he should try to seduce her, but he cannot force her to have sex with him. However, if a husband refuses to his wife a few times or in a certain period of time, she can ask the Beit Din to divorce and to have her Ketubah alimonies. Okay, and you do need to remember that the Ketubah was written at a time, was invented at times that human life had no meaning, no value, and women were considered as the man's property. And a way to claim possession over a woman was to have sex with her. Okay? So basically what the Ketubah is telling us, that yes, you can have sex whenever you want. You, as a woman, not you as a man.
And there were many wives at that time.
To a certain point a certain time in history?
When
The answer is yes.
When Ketubah started,
And
there
for
were
some
many
lucky
ways.
Sephardi.
But also, isn't it written somewhere, depending upon your occupation?
Yes, and that leads me to Mishnah, tractate Ketubot. And our sages dealt with the question, what happened if you're not home to satisfy your wife when she wants to? Doesn't mean that you necessarily need to get divorced. And the answer was not, but they did put a minimum to the frequency, because it's a human need. And making love is one of the things that separates between being friends and being married. Once again, I remind you that sex in Judaism is in a specific framework that we call marriage. And it's forbidden when you're not. Okay? So what they tell us is, Beit Shammai says that if you're a common person, every other week is fine. Why every other week? Because during the month there are 7 days of period and then 7 clean days, and it's 2 weeks, so every 2 weeks is fine. Beit Hillel says every Shabbat. That's part of Shabbat joy.
So it's not work.
My rabbi, to prepare me for the wedding, told me it's should be ideally, I don't know if it's rather a maximum, it's every day and twice on Shabbos.
Lucky you had a good rabbi.
Thank you.
Sorry, lucky you, he's got a good rabbi.
I'll send you his email.
Yeah. But it depends on your occupation. Because that's what Hillel and Shammai are saying. But that's for the common people. Now let's talk about specifics. Okay? Students who leave the house without their wife's permission, disciples, yeshiva buchers, the minimum is once a month. Once every 30 days, you need to be back home. You're not entitled to abandon marriage in order to immerse yourself in Torah. Your first commitment is to your wife and to your family. Okay?
And that's just for
The
Torah,
workers-
not for...
The workers every Shabbat. Hatayalin, if you can walk to work and you don't need to drive to work, every day. The workers twice on Shabbat. Means that if you have a permanent work and you walk back and forth, twice every Shabbat. Hagamalim, those that rides or leads the camels,
Caravan
The
the
drivers.
caravan riders.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so today I will say if you're a truck driver
Yeah, yeah.
and you need to leave for a long period of time because that's your work, once every 30 days. Now, Hasapanim, crew that works on ships that goes out to the sea every 6 months.
In each harbor.
I was just gonna say that.
You wish,
Of course, everyone will
you wish.
Every port.
But I just need to remind you that this is the minimum. This is the minimum, not the maximum. It's the minimum bar. Okay? The Maimonides will remind us that this is an obligation and we shouldn't walk around like roosters looking for sex all the time. But we need to do it whenever it's possible out of joy and in order to make our wives happy or in order to make babies. Okay? So on the one hand, it's a very important thing. And our sages do understand that it brings the couple together. But on the other hand, it's not for having sex, it's for making love. And I think that we can be cynical about a lot of things that the rabbis said and their understanding of the world. I think that this is one of many places that I applaud them for differentiating between making love and having sex.
Why is maybe I missed this because I came late, but why is, not only in this, but also around the conduct of lovemaking and so on, why is there the emphasis on the female so much rather than on equality, for example? Is that there because there's a presumption of power and difference, or what is it, or a woman is closer to God, if there's kind of a theological explanation?
I think that basically because the world is not egalitarian and not equal even today, and those who wrote the halakha and made the social rules were men. And for them, women was this mysterious creature that can give birth, that can create life. Still is. Seriously, right? And it's even more serious and more scary when you're 17, or when you're 14, or when you have your first crush on a girl. Okay, it's part of the reality. And I think that the rabbis try to contain this mystery and to make sense out of it. And my grandmother, rest in peace, said that the man is wearing the pants in the house, but his wife will tell him which color and which kind.
The man is the head, but the woman is the neck.
Yeah. Now, seriously, I think that this is what we're talking about when we say "V'davak b'ishto v'hayu lebasar echad." You start off as individuals, and when you form a family, you need to keep your individual identity, but you're forming one new structure. It's a family. It's not two individuals that are sharing a common space. It's not a legal agreement like it usually is in the States. For some people in the States, getting married is a hobby. Okay, and it's not a joke. One of my friends in the States, when I visited him, introduced me to his girlfriend saying, "This is my future ex-wife."
Yeah.
They weren't even married yet.
Yeah.
But that's the social understanding, that you get together for a certain period of time, you either have kids together or not, and then you continue on with your life. This is not what we're talking about in Judaism. We're talking about creating a family structure. And there's holiness inside this structure. It becomes one family, not two individuals, because we are taking part in creating life. Okay, and who's really creating life? We're just being partners, but the one who's giving birth is the woman.
You think in practical terms through history, even though this is the theory, women have mostly get told that they have to be at the beck and call of the husbands?
Where?
In general, including in Judaism, in that even though this is a theory written down, that it should be when the woman wants, but that women have largely been told through history that they have to do whatever the man wants and be available whenever the husband commands.
It's in Judaism as well. You can do whatever you want to do with your wife. That Maimonides said that very clearly. But there is a restriction. If it's mutual and with her consent. And I think that this sentence in the end is what makes it so different than medieval laws in Europe or in other places. You need her consent.
Yes.
It has to be mutual. Otherwise, it's a rape.
Oh, yes.
And Judaism claimed it.
But I think
long time ago.
I think you were asking about the difference of theory versus practice.
Exactly.
So there may be kind of theological, practical frameworks, and I mean this is like I've heard of this before, but I didn't know the background that how you explained it in terms of trying to make it. I just thought it was kind of a very visionary analysis of a power relationship that might be there, particularly at those times where physical force may have been the predominant factor influencing the relationships. And here you put a framework where the one who is physically stronger is constrained by rules and regulations about how this works. But I think what you're asking is but what is it in practice? How did it actually work in practice? I mean, everybody has their idealized version, but...
Is there anyone here who didn't once in his life jaywalked in the street?
What does this mean?
Walked across the street in red light, in the crossing line. In between cars, in the middle of the street where there's a crossing line over there. How many of us
were stopped by a policewoman for jaywalking in Jerusalem?
Only you, Michelle.
This will be a very interesting analogy for where you're heading.
In a typical classroom, okay, in junior high, how many of them downloaded an MP3 file from the internet, violating copyrights? Okay, laws exist because this is the perfect world that we would like to achieve. Do we always live according to the law? I believe that we're not. We are much more obligated to social norms, than to the law. The reason that we change the norm into a law is because not everyone acting according to the norm that we would like to happen. So yes, I'm talking about the theory.
No, but
what
I'm not even
happened
talking
in
about...
practice, I believe that there's a code of silence.
I'm not even talking about what happens in practice or who breaks the law versus what's the law. I'm saying that most women, through history and cultures and religions, are taught not this version of the law, but rather that in theory, never mind what happens for real, but that in theory, they must be submissive and there whenever the husband
So I feel that my rabbinical obligation is to tell as many women as possible that this is also Judaism.
Yes.
I'm not saying that the other rabbis are wrong.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that Judaism has many dimensions.
Yes.
And we choose what we like to surface up and what we like to keep down.
Yeah.
Plus, the women were probably afraid that their husbands would leave them if they didn't answer to things.
Well, because that's another side of it. The concept of guilt for not being available, it's usually only the woman's side, not
Like it's okay. This is being recorded.
We're getting too serious, so I would like to tell you a joke.
Good.
Okay? Mendel comes to bed Shabbat evening with a glass of water and 2 aspirins for headache, giving his wife the aspirin. And she says, "But I don't have a headache." So he smiles and says, "Oh yeah, tonight is the night." Okay? And if you think that this is a joke, you have a bad sense of humor, but I'm serious about it. Because at the 9th century, Rabbi Saadia Gaon in Egypt, that was considered Saadia Gaon, that was considered as one of the most educated philosophers of his time. By the way, people hardly recognized it, but he was the first mediator known as a mediator. At his time, it was just the beginning, the early ages of Islam, and there was a huge war between the Mu'tazila and the Kalam over the question, what came first? Did God sat with the Quran and created the world, or did God created the world and only then wrote the Quran? Okay? And trust me, in Judaism, we have even more ridiculous things that we're still fighting over. But it's religious, it's important. It was important for people to kill over this question. And the Jewish rabbi was the mediator that put an end to this war. That was Saadia Gaon. And he was also, besides being a philosopher, he was also given this, you know, those people that can look through people and understand them. I'm not talking about shrinks. They understand nothing but taking money. I'm talking about people that you can actually talk. No shrinks around? Okay. Yeah. The lawsuit is coming soon. But it's a joke. Not to be used in court. I think that some editing is required now. But okay, let's talk Saadia Gaon.
This is the worst thing.
And what he's telling us in his book, Beliefs and Ideas, Emunot V'Deot, is that people believe that tashmish, which is basically sexual intercourse, is the highest level of love. And they say that they claim that this is the ultimate pleasure from all pleasures, that every other pleasure in the world you can replace with something, and you cannot replace making love with anything else. Nothing can take its place.
Not even chocolate.
Not even a lot of chocolate. And just...
I'm not gonna say what I think.
But, you know what, let's get nasty, and I will say it, that even sex is not substitute for love. He's not talking about sex, he's talking about making love. Okay? And he says that it fills the mind and the soul with happiness. Prozac. It helps the body to overcome pain. Benadryl. Yes? Especially the mind, the head, and the brain. He calms down people's anger. It chases away bad thoughts, and it's good against melancholy. Melancholy. And even furthermore, this is the reason for the talking person, the wise person, to exist, and there is no other reason for two people to be friends with each other than to reach this point that they can actually make love. Now that's about 1,000 years before Freud. And what did Freud say? What makes us going? To refrain from pain and to seek for pleasure. Okay, so that was there. And once again, in the context of sex in the family or making love in the family structure, what he is actually doing is promoting marriage. If you're a melancholic person, find someone that will bring the best out of you and get married. if you suffer from depression and half of the symptoms that he's talking about are depression, find a soulmate. Get married. Don't go and have sex. Make love. Find a soulmate.
Isn't that falsehood that you're putting that expectation of happiness in finding someone? And
It's not happiness. It's happy moments. It's creating something together. You create a family together.
Is he talking about
It's not
marriage?
Yes,
I want to understand if it specifically mentioned marriage.
marriage. That's the context. Now,
Once every day.
I know, guys. I know that what you had in mind, what you have in mind is sex. It's fine. We're human beings, but I don't believe that their intention is just the act itself. I think that it's everything that surrounds it. That surrounds it. The setup. And the setup is love, companionship, friendship, sharing your life with, sharing your sorrow with someone, sharing your happiness with someone, being there for them, and having someone to be there for you. It's not just about living happily ever after. Okay, and I performed about 400 weddings in Israel so far. And before breaking the glass, I asked the bride and the groom to walk toward the glass hand in hand. And after we say Meshkachech Yerushalayim and the ritual part, I usually remind them that this is one of the essence of marriage. That we are not there together just when we're happy. We need to be there to hold each other when our world shatters, when things breaks down. This is our real commitment. Not just jumping into bed making babies. What happened if the baby that you just had is now 2 weeks old and is in a hospital fighting for his life? This is when you need to be there for each other. This is where making love is not just sexual intercourse. It's about putting your hand on the shoulder. It's about giving a hug. It's about wiping a tear. This is making love, not just sexual intercourse. And I think that the whole Jewish discussion about sex is to bring this understanding into the relationship. Yes, it's a Jewish commandment to be fertile and multiply. But we're not talking about random sex. We're not talking about sex as part of our religious practice. We're not even talking about sex between a husband and a wife. We are talking about making love, being as one. ודבק באשתו והיו לבשר אחד. They need to become one. At that specific moment, it should be a moment of holiness. And the Zohar, that is, I think, the book of Jewish mysticism, say that whenever a man and a woman makes love, then God takes all. There's an understanding in the Kabbalah that God is like an onion, and the Sfirot are covering a deeper and deeper, or a higher and higher quality of God. And we find this quote that God is revealing God's glory and making love with the Shekhinah. So it's not only that we are uniting people on this earthly level, we're also uniting something that is bigger than us. We're bringing love to the world. Now I can be very cynical about mysticism. I'm very serious about love. I do believe that love makes a difference. And if I will try to catch up, and there are a lot more texts that we will not touch, okay? The thread that goes through all of them is that we don't sanctify the intercourse. We don't sanctify sex, the act itself. We sanctify what should lead to it. And that's, I might say, a reunion or two souls combined into one holy moment that brings new life to the world. And this is something that happened in a wider context where the world, and I do need to remind you that the Mid-Ages are being referred to in history as the Dark Ages. And in the Jewish world, we came and said, we're not taking part of it. Or we don't want to take part of it. We shouldn't take part of it. What was the reality? I don't know. I know how to read the texts.
It's interesting because everything you describe seems to be the complete opposite of the traditional first night for a Jewish couple straight after their wedding, and the need for proof that they've consummated the marriage. And how does that go with the woman's...
No, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
This is the cultural thing. It's
Yeah.
not how the first night should be, but that's
I
how
will just
it
rephrase
became. That's
what
it
you've
became.
said, and I won't say in Judaism. I will say certain rabbinical, halachic, Jewish branches in Judaism. It's not Judaism. Judaism is all of the above. Okay? And there's a reason why our sages tells us, Aseh lecha rav, make yourself a rabbi. You can choose the ideology and the rabbi that you want to be committed to. Okay, one of the reasons that I'm a progressive rabbi, not an Orthodox rabbi, is because I don't want to tell you how to live your life. Ask me a question, I will give you all the texts from the beginning to our days that I can find. I will process it with you. I will tell you what I believe is right, but eventually it's your decision to make. Okay? So the first night doesn't have to be a nightmare. It should be a moment of joy. It depends on where you belong to. And I'm not talking about orthodoxy. I will wrap it up in 2 minutes. Okay? I'm not talking about orthodoxy because I met Orthodox rabbis that left me speechless with their understanding of love and marriage and first night and the chuppah. Orthodoxy can be amazing about it, even in the halachic structure. But it's about where you're aiming, setting your hopes, your expectations. How do you do the build-up to this night? And I think that this build-up brings holiness to marriage. And this is why I called it not just Jewish sex, but sex, love, and holiness. It should bring holiness into the relationship. One last story that will contradict everything that we talked about the miracles, but I will leave you to do the interpretation and to take what you want to take from it. In the Babylonian Talmud, there is a story about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, Rashbi, that the whole Zohar is a tribute to. And according to the halakha, if a woman cannot give birth after a certain time, a few years, the husband, according to the halakha, can divorce her and take another woman. Okay? Or take a mistress, bilegish, like in the case of Yaakov. Okay? More than half of the tribes of Israel are not the sons of Rachel and Leah. Okay? They are the sons of others. So this couple come to Rabbi Yochanan, to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, saying, we are married for many years and we cannot bring children to the world, and according to the halakha, we need to separate. Now, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai understands that they're not getting divorced because of lack of love, lack of companionship, or lack of friendship. But they probably had very challenging times together. So he looks at the couple and he asks them, how did you get married? And they say, with a feast, with a celebration, with happiness. And he says, well, I'm asking you to get divorced the same way. And he's asking the husband, is it okay with you? And he says, well, yes. And he's asking the wife, and the wife says, yes. And then he asks, would you like to deal with the ketubah? And the husband said, I don't need to deal with the ketubah. She can take whatever she wants to take from our house. And then Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai understands that this is a real couple. They became one. They don't think about themselves, they think about the other first. And at that night that they should get divorced, the wife is giving a lot of wine to her husband until he gets completely drunk and passed away. And she asked the servant, pass out, drunk, pass out. And she asks the servants to take him with the bed that he fell asleep on to her parents' house. And when he wakes up in the morning, he finds himself in his in-laws' house, asking her, what happened? And she says, well, you told me that I can take whatever I want to take from our marriage, and this is the only thing that I want. And they go back to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and they ask him, so what should we do now? And he says, go home, be happy, be as one, and everything will be all right. Now, according to the story, it wasn't immediate. It took some time, but she got pregnant in the end. And once again, combining everything that I've talked about so far, I think that this story is a good example of what we expect from a Jewish couple. We're not trying to look at the world through beautiful glasses. Yeah, don't know what's the expression in Hebrew. We are facing challenges in life. Some of them we can control, some of them we can't control. Some of them brings us down on our knees crying, some of them we want to burst in happiness. But we do expect in the Jewish family to be there for each other. And when we reach this certain point of making love, we should consider it as a moment of holiness, as a moment that we should cherish, and not just to bring life into the world. Iguanas are doing it very good. They're even more fertile than us. Do they feel love? I'm not sure. We do. And this should be the essence of the relationship. Now I feel like old Westheimer.
Don't be an iguana.
No, do it like an iguana. No, don't.
No.
No iguana.
No.
Not kosher iguana.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Thank you.